Welcome everyone. We're here for Trainer, how to improve your in-house training. Before we get started, just a few logistics notes. Everyone will be in listen-only mode, but we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation using the chat. So feel free to put any questions that come to mind as the training progresses, as well as towards the end. And we will do our best to answer as many of them as we can with the time allotted. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you within the coming days, so you can further review it or share it with others. We also, at the end, will have a survey, so that would be great if you could fill that out so we can better understand your needs and how we can continue to deliver these webinars to meet your expectations. My name is Denise Webster. I am the VP of Food Safety, covering training and consulting here at SCS. I've been in the space for a little over 25 years in all different capacities, but my most recent 8 or so years has been a lead trainer in all the different regulatory and industry topics. And so I am excited to present this material to you and share some of our knowledge that we've learned over the years. For those of you that are new to SCS, we are an international leader in third-party food safety, environmental, and sustainability certification, as well as training, consulting, life cycle assessment, and any topic that the industry needs to move the dial forward in the food space as well. Food and ag service offerings, we have a whole list of claims and food safety audit certs, as well as those sustainable ag and social compliance audits as well. So what are we going to cover today? Well, as a training provider here at SCS, we have trained thousands of food industry professionals on skills such as auditing, regulatory courses, and deeper dive topics like risk assessments. And personally, as a lead trainer, I've had a privilege to train thousands of food industry professionals and at all levels within manufacturing, all the way to individual peers like myself. Also, we thought it just was timely to share the knowledge that we've learned on this topic of training and be able to help you grow your training skills and provide clear, concise, value-added training to your own teams. We'll also set the stage with the importance of training, really that purpose of why having yourself and other trainers attend a Train the Trainer course and why that is important as being able to be someone that can deliver that clear, concise training. As well as we'll explore the principles and characteristics of adult learning, how to use effective communication skills, and we'll look briefly at even designing of that training material and how we can use technology to engage, as well as be able to ensure that we're impacting it from a competency standpoint. We thought perhaps let's start off with a poll and get your thoughts here. How many hours does it take to be competent in a new skill? So let me just launch this for you guys. All right, the poll is opened. All right, looks like everyone's had a chance, so let me go ahead and close that poll, and I will share those results. Okay, so the answer is 20 hours. It's also referred to as the 20-hour rule. It suggests that it takes approximately 20 hours of deliberate and focused practice to become reasonably competent in a new skill. Well, 20 hours may not make you an expert, though. It's enough to be able to apply and be confident in the basics of a new skill. Now, those that chose 100 hours, that is correct as well, but that's correct if you are to be more advanced and proficient in that new skill. And they say that actually it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert. So that's definitely a lot. All right, let me hide that. Okay. Thank you guys for giving that a go. Okay, we summarized why training is important into 3 main reasons. One, employee development. It's invaluable for us to ensure that we're focused on those new and employees that have been around for 10, 20 years in the scope of our training. We can't always think about training just those new individuals that are coming in. We need to be able to meet organizational and role requirements at all levels, and that includes yourself. Don't discount your own employee development in training. Has it been a while since you've had training? What are those professional development and personal development skills that you would be able to help to enhance your career growth? Second is to foster a learning culture. So we talk about creating and improving our food safety cultures, but training is a crucial component of that. It also helps encourage continuous improvement mindset. It builds and creates cohesive teams, and ultimately it does increase retention. We have this quote here that we pulled, which was 94% of employees say they would stay at a company longer if investment in their professional development and companies with strong learning cultures see an employee retention rate increase of 30 to 50% on average. So you can see it definitely makes an impact, and you can then focus on continuing improvement if you're not always having to train new people because you've increased that retention of the existing. And they're on a growth path as well, if they choose. Lastly, the cost-effective solution. So when we customize our training to meet organizational needs and expectations, it can be cost-effective. What do we mean by this? Well, if you've heard of the cost of quality, it's that method that allows organizations to determine the cost and the cost of failure when producing and maintaining quality products. And we've learned, and there are other studies and statistics that show that improved training, not just training, but training that's effective and customized and focused, can help reduce non-conformances. So that investment of the time and energy to put the training program together, to get out there, train, reinforce it, check competency, verify, it actually does maximize the return on investment when we look at things from a cost of quality perspective. Hopefully I have you sold on why training is important. Now, why are the lead trainers important? Well, if you've watched experienced trainers or presenters in action, you will likely note several things about their behavior. They care about their learners, they're passionate about their topic, they understand the importance of their role. They even kind of commiserate from a professional standpoint in the way in which they talk about the different topics. Being able to have that experienced, skilled trainer is a luxury because, again, it takes time, right? 10,000 hours to be an expert. But what are some of those key requirements and objectives that we could have in place to be successful? One is to develop a robust training calendar. We need to make sure that we have new trainings in there to keep things lively, as well as, of course, our standard refresher, but not that same training every single time. How can we refresh the refresher training? And we'll talk more about some ideas here in the coming slides. Determine what roles need to take applicable training. This is the tough one because not only do we have to create that training calendar, we have to coordinate that with what the roles and responsibilities are in the company and the department and the different titles and positions. We want to look at that type and frequency, the length and timing, the location and the environment. We want to also mix this up. We want to make sure that when we have our training, It's not always done in one type of format, which we'll talk about as well. Preparation, the materials need to meet the objectives, going back and making sure that as a lead trainer, you might be creating the materials and also delivering them. Either way, whoever's on both of those sides, you need to make sure that they meet those objectives. We have to have effective time management. I have 45 minutes to 50 minutes to deliver this webinar for you guys. So I need to know approximately, does this material meet the objectives in a timely manner? And ensure active learning and engagement. This is that experienced trainer, right? How are they caring, passionate, commiserate? How do they prepare? How do they make sure that they're using those tools in their toolbox of being a trainer to make sure that they are pulling in that audience, ultimately for competency. And so we do need to look at the type of evaluation or assessment that you need to undertake in order to ensure that they have understood what you have trained. So as a company and a lead trainer, you have a lot of responsibilities. This is not a small task. And so let's kind of go through a few more items that may help you build a little bit more strategy around this. So first is knowledge. Your role as a trainer, you have to be knowledgeable about the topic. You don't have to be an expert as long as you are knowledgeable enough about the material to be able to give it that context, but you might need to consult experts in order to be able to build that material in a meaningful way. Also, you need to have that right attitude, that positive, can-do, helpful, self-motivated, but it's really about what your role as a trainer is and who are you training and how do you need to also kind of adjust that framework. Sometimes we need to be serious. Sometimes we can be funny. Sometimes we need a lot of energy and enthusiasm to train a topic, whereas sometimes it might just be more perfunctory and we need to go and take a meaningful approach. But as long as you do it in a way that makes sense and it's, your integrity of your attitude, delivering that training is there. Also, skills. This kind of goes hand in hand with that knowledge base, but what skills do you need to know as a trainer? Well, you need to know the skills of training. So you might be knowledgeable, you might have the best attitude, but if you don't have the skills of being a good trainer, then you can see this beautiful Venn diagram falls apart. So that means, yes, interpersonal skills, leadership, verbal skills, organization and planning, all those things that we looked at in the prior task list to be able to manage that training expectation, how to present in a meaningful way. There are different strategies in terms of how to present training, and there are different learners. So we need the skill to be able to adapt our training for the different learning styles as well. And we'll talk about adult learning here in a few minutes. So what are the 7 characteristics of an outstanding trainer? Being enthusiastic. You don't have to be over the top, but at least you want to be somewhat engaging in terms of the tone and approach that you're taking. Confident, right? It is nerve-wracking when you first stand up in front of people to train. I've presented in front of thousands of people, but actually I think a smaller group sometimes can be even more scary because now you have a smaller audience. So find your confidence. Relax. Be able to be measured in your approach and relaxed is that characteristic that it's a learned skill when it comes to training. Humorous, right? You don't have to be humorous in terms of being the best comedian, but you can be lighthearted. That really is another kind of approach. Breaks down those barriers of the trainee versus the trainer, in that capacity. But ultimately, you do need to be in control. There always will be, well, not always, but there sometimes will be trainees that try to challenge you or are not paying attention, or you've got to find those ways to ensure that you are in control and that everyone is engaged. And that does go through that engagement lens where we are looking at, does everyone look like they're paying attention? Are they nodding their heads? Are they being receptive to what you're saying? Is there someone kind of distracted on their cell phone? That kind of goes back with that in control. How do you re-engage people as well? And yes, being that subject matter expert where you have that knowledge combined with the skill of training, all of these coming together do make outstanding trainers. And you might take these 7 characteristics and look at even your own self or other trainers you have in your organization and see which of these areas you might need to continuously improve on, or you might say, oh, we have a great trainer in our company that, or person in our company that could be a great trainer. So the purpose of a train the trainer program. So if you do identify that person in your operation, or of course yourself, it's important to take them through a train the trainer. We just talked about many different things that they need to consider, and so having them go through a train the trainer course can really help them create that understanding of the areas where they need to build competence or adapt to change and better position themselves to take on such a role for your organization. This is also great too if you have more trainers in the pool. If you're the only one doing training, raise your hand. Please bring more into the fold. You've got tons of knowledge that you can leverage in your organization. You can get a deeper understanding of the company process, product, and culture. Maybe you're up there doing the training, but you pull in others to speak on different topics, provide different learning skills. I even had an experience where when we were doing our food safety culture survey at one of my clients' sites, they rated our training program low. And we ended up digging a little deeper, and we found that it wasn't the trainee, it wasn't really the material, but it was the way in which we were giving that same training year after year. And so they had already learned those skills. They wanted to learn new things, and they wanted real world experiences. So we took that training out into the plant floor. We taught them, it was chemical training. We taught them how to titrate. We talked about their chemicals, not some random chemical in a video that we presented to them. And that was exactly the right fit. But again, you have to be knowledgeable about what your team needs, as well as building that train the trainer program so all of your trainers know those best practices and be able to adapt as needed. So what about adult learning? Well, they say as adults that we only remember 20 minutes of an hour training, and that we need repetition. If any of you, and I'm sure most of you have taken the PCQI trainings, that is exactly what that training is built for. And that's why it's repetitive, and we cover the topics multiple times because of those principles of what we need to do to kind of get it into our longer term memory. So we do have some key principles that we wanted to share with you guys that hopefully are helpful when you're building your material. One, be flexible with your learning approach. Not all adults learn the same. Some prefer, read, write. Some prefer that they have to engage in the activity. You have to vary up your styles and understand those preferences to be able to make sure that we're accommodating all types of learning. Prior experience. So that's the great thing about teaching adults versus kids. We already have prior experience and knowledge we can bring to the table. And so this can create more dynamic training. We can dig deeper into the topic. If we're just going to talk about hand washing and that we need to wash our hands, for our GMP. Well, we know that we're adults, but perhaps we haven't actually ever demonstrated proper hand washing or talked about why the soap is different from the sanitizer, or what does it do when we don't wash our hands? Are we digging deep enough to create that dynamic training, because we do have experienced adults that are taking this training? Also, relevance and motivation. Adults are motivated to learn. We're already ready to go typically. So a trainer needs to be able to, though, apply real world examples and scenarios and resonate with the learner's experience, which is very helpful in that learning curve. Also, problem-centered learning. Adults learn best when presented with authentic problems to solve. We just have that natural ability to want to solve issues, rather than a passive reception of information. So how do we do this? Well, we should ask questions. Like here, we've got a poll coming up again. You can do polls. You could do activities, present them with an issue. We found this non-conforming issue in our operation. Let's talk about your ideas and how does this apply to our policies and procedures. We can learn from being also problem-centered learning, so it goes both ways. But that does need to also create that culture of respect and collaboration. We want to ensure that they know that we're just not teaching to them, that they have an ability to collaborate back, and that we respect their knowledge, and ultimately being able to build and encourage things like discussions. Have you ever been in a training where you ask if anybody has any questions and it's like crickets, or you ask a question and nobody answers? Well, that's because they don't know that you value their collaboration. So this is a trust you have to build. You can do that through maybe group activities and some peer-to-peer learning opportunities to start building that trust of collaboration. And lastly, feedback. Once the training's done, you want to make sure you're asking, was it effective? Was it timely? You want to go do your own self-assessments, peer evaluation, be able to ensure that the competency piece of what you've taught is being effective when it comes to actual practical application. You can also, just a few other tips, use videos, images. If I'm going to talk about a non-conformance, it's good if there's pictures from your actual site. There's a lots of different tools in your toolbox to really engage that adult learner. All right, let's open up our next poll. Give me a second. What training format do you prefer the most? Okay, let me launch it here. Give you guys a minute to get your thoughts in. All right, so let's go ahead and close that. And I'll share. All right, so it looks like 51% of you do prefer that hands-on on the job training. And that's great. I always like to, whenever I can, incorporate that hands-on training, because that does kind of get that additional comprehension of what's learned, but it can't unfortunately replace some of that in classroom, or whether it's virtual, in person, but that hard skill learning. So that might be reviewing a procedure before. Let them read that procedure. So 26% of you appreciate that. You do have to have that, teach me first, show me second kind of thought process. But yes, sometimes it can be done at the same time. And those are really great tools. And then 13% of you prefer that self-paced. You'd rather be able to digest it in the manner in which you're ready to receive that information. And we at SCS offer a lot of self-paced training, are continuing to grow that portfolio, because we know that is a growing area of format that people are appreciating and needing. And then 10% virtual. If you've ever taken any of our virtual trainings, we definitely use all those tools, and it can be great, especially if you want to train, say you have 2 or 3 sites in your organization. Why just train one site? Train them all together, put them on a Zoom. I've done that on my side, where I have seen the cross sharing in an organization when all of them are on virtual training that they don't get on a day-to-day basis, working in their different business units and divisions, and sometimes even in different countries. So all of these are great, but thank you guys for providing that knowledge here. Okay, so it really does, say something about understanding your audience, right? So are you training the boss? Are you training a peer? Are you training people that have to execute a particular task, the employees within your facility or company? So when we say know your audience, we thought it'd be helpful to give you guys some helpful tips and tricks here. First, conduct a thorough audience analysis to understand their background and experience. As trainers, sometimes we'll definitely look in advance, what kind of companies, am I going to train? What's their background? And maybe I don't know that. So, having everyone introduce themselves and give them a little bit of background is always helpful. And it doesn't have to be, anything extensive, just, your title and what do you do for the company. Set and obtain expectations. This is definitely something that I do every training. I have objectives that I've set for you guys as trainees, but I ask, what do you want to get out of this training, right? What are your expectations? And I don't just state that as a trainer to have you say your expectations and then put it off to the side. No, then we as trainers need to be able to incorporate those expectations or calibrate, say, okay, well, we're actually not be able to cover that in this training, but let's pick up on that particular expectation at this next training, or whatever the case may be. Also, you can use polls or icebreakers to set the tone and just to gather insight. You see through our polls, we kind of gathered some insight. It provided an engaging activity. So what's your favorite type of vacation, right? It can be something as simple as getting the person talking. So they're sharing their favorite type of vacation or food. This allows them to break their ice, to warm up their voice and confidence in being able to start actively engaging in the training. Tailor the content to the audience needs through customization techniques. Be aware of times and ensure adequate breaks. So if it is a long training, you definitely want to make sure you're accommodating those breaks. And maybe, the material goes for another 5 to 10 minutes, but you can see that everyone needs a break, then just, take the break. Use multifaceted approach for continued engagement. What do we mean by this? That is that different learning style, being able to engage in different ways, not just stand up and present a PowerPoint and then let them go on their way. So effective trainer communication skills, we talked about some of these already, but there's more. One is, active listening. So being able to focus on understanding as well when they ask a question or respond, as well as you may need to clarify by paraphrasing or presenting an example. Not everyone's going to know that acronym that you just stated. You might have to look at it in a different way or provide it in different approaches or examples, especially if that is complicated or technical material. Make sure to allow the trainees to ask relevant questions, have times for those. You could even do passive type things like having Post-it notes at the table and different engagement tools there. Demonstrate empathy and interest through verbal and nonverbal cues. That's body language, facial expression, gestures, maintaining eye contact. And ultimately, don't just focus on one person or one area of the room. So as new trainers, sometimes because we're nervous and we're not confident, we end up focusing on one person or one area that, like, maybe it's a person we know, right? So you want to kind of move around the room. And that doesn't just mean your eye, your body. Move your body around. You don't have to stand still in the same place on your mark, right? Move around, walk around the classroom, engage in a way that is active. It does actually encourage active learning as well. And then encourage that feedback and dialogue and collaboration, as well as being able to find activities that can pull that out. So why is active learning so important? Just looking at some of the research, that forgetting curve shows that within 1 hour, learners forget an average of 50% of the information presented. With 24 hours, they forget an average of 70% of the information. And within a week, they forget about up to 90% of what they've learned. So that really doesn't necessarily have to apply to every learning experience. This is just on average. So when we use active learning, we can get these numbers more improved. And that means through hands-on activity, creating gamified material. What do we mean by that? You know, where it's an activity, there's a game, there's some sort of, whether it be, you know, on demand and you're moving something around, you're playing a video, all of this helps to increase retention through that active learning and group discussion. Lastly, findings show also that a burst of physical activity as short as 15 minutes can improve memory and streamline skills and acquisition. So even giving them that Post-it note and having them go up and put their ideas in a bucket or move tables, all of that secretly is active learning and increases those percentages. I know there's a lot of material here, so you guys can kind of digest this later on when we send you the webinar. But looking at how you design trainings, we've created some tips, and I'm just going to focus on a few of these here, which is the structure. The structure of your training is really important. Does it ensure that logical flow? What you want to do first is put kind of a punch list together of all your expectations and desires for that training, and then organize it, and then make sure that it is logical and it has all the content that you're looking for. Then look at what format would be best applicable to ensure that these objectives and competency can be met. And then look at the timing. Have you maybe presented too much and you need to break that training down into multiple sections, multiple days, two different trainings? Make sure that you have enough time to do those engagement strategies. It's not easy to design a breakout activity that works. So you just have to, it's trial and error, kind of use that gamified approach. It can be very simple, like I mentioned, like the Post-it notes. It doesn't have to be these complicated activities either. A simple kind of Q&A format for certain sections are good. You might want to, even with that, have some pre-questions queued up from the so-called audience in advance that can help that engagement. And just also for effective training design, we also have to look at what is our resources and where we're going to deliver this training. Do we have enough room for those training? Do we need screens, tables, Post-it boards, pens? What are all the resources available to us, and how can we optimize it to ensure that it can be as successful as possible? And be flexible with your approach. Don't just always use PowerPoint, right? We've got whiteboards, we've got additional materials. If it's a long training, they even say, you know, just like having like putty or pipe cleaners, those type of things You can design that in your training, or you can just put it at the table for those individuals that have that more manipulating skill where they can learn better when their hands are busy doing something. So using technology with, of course, the advancement of AI and all of the different ability that we can expand our resources quickly, especially around our computer-based courses. This will really help us to create micro learnings. It'll help us ensure that those new employees, we get them trained quickly. And then with our more face-to-face training, we can then do that on a schedule that makes sense versus just always constantly trying to catch up with our training. We can use technology. We can also have those surveys. You can use a Microsoft Teams form, which is what we do for surveys, or any kind of survey tool that then uploads those results. So you're not having to calculate or look at those results yourself. Also, I know there's many different training learning systems out there where you can track and log users' progress and completion, even a training register. All these things do, of course, have a cost, but we can reduce cost of that in-person trainer, faster onboarding. Also, in many of these cases, like, for example, our self-paced courses, it's approved certified material where you actually get a certificate as well. What can some of these courses look like? Well, here's just a screenshot of one that we have coming up, which is our food safety culture training that's in development. And you can see it's very simple graphics, and we have an activity where they're looking at is effective training a skill for food safety culture or not for food safety culture? And what they do is they move it down into the bucket, and if they get the wrong bucket, they get instant feedback. And then if they put it in the right bucket, and then they check, they get positive feedback, and they continue on to the next card, right? So this creates that increased learning retention, creates that gamified approach like we're used to on our phones, and helps us to be able to create that real-time feedback as well. And then they got 12 out of 14 cards correct, etc. So lastly, we need to look at the assessment of competency. If we spend all this time and energy with training and it doesn't land well with competency, then we could end up having increased nonconformances, lack of proper execution at all levels. And so we have a few key tips here to help you really take a hard look at competency. It's an area that we kind of rush through sometimes. We might just give them a test and then put it in a binder, and then that's it. You really should do more, especially for those topics that are really important around food safety or regulatory compliance. So you do want to have knowledge checks throughout, just kind of check-ins. Yes, you can do quizzes or exams. That's always helpful because it's that hard piece of paper or online exam that you can refer back to for some audit. But we need to look at that further. We need to look at the training effectiveness by going out into the operation or collecting feedback, be able to do surveys or evaluations, even focus groups later on. That'll help us collect both qualitative and quantitative data about our training, about that topic, and be open for continuous improvement. We also need to look at our trends. Do we still see complaints in this area? Do we still see non-conformances in our GMPs? Is there further areas of enhancement that we need in order to increase not just the competency? They might understand it, the tools, but do they understand the importance and the whys? Sometimes we forget in training to explain the whys of training. And ultimately do have to embrace that culture of continuous learning and improvement with our training programs. Okay, So we do have, for your own information, our on-demand training courses, and here is, we're continuing to expand also our Spanish and our offering. So definitely take a look at those. We also have our virtual, in-person, on-site as well, whatever you guys need, training available. Our specific 2024 training calendar is available. And we do have an upcoming Train the Trainer course in June. So just next week, if you have someone that wants to take a deeper dive into this material, I covered kind of the basics today. And then in October, we are also offering again at our discount code. You just register online, put TTT50 in, and you sign up for that course. If you want us to do it in person for a bunch of trainers, we also can offer discounts on private training. I also cover consulting, and so we do food safety consulting of all different capacities, as well as any of our certifications and claims. We can help support you guys along the way. We have a team. All right, so we will go ahead and open up for questions. Let's see here. All right, so I see we have a question here. What trends or hurdles do you see in the next 3 years with training professionals? Thank you, John. That's actually a great question. One, it's probably no surprise, it's time. That time investment to, be able to find time to make sure that that training material is up to date, relevant, and current. Carving that time to do that as a training professional and is really important to stay, to keep everything fresh. The second thing is your own knowledge and skills. As I mentioned, the adult learning is changing, but also, so we still have to keep up to date on our own skills and training and be able to really apply it in different formats. And then lastly, I just think the amount of new people coming into the industry are at very different levels of their own skill and knowledge. So having ways to still engage those individuals that have been around with the business or the culture for a long time, while you're also engaging the newer employees or the new employees. And that same training that you used to give to everybody might not be effective anymore. And how do you break that up? How do you pull in those coaches and mentors that have been there a while that can help you with training? So I think those are the trends and things that you probably want to look at for the next few years. Okay, let's see. Any other questions out there? Okay. All right. Well, I think then that does it. I do appreciate you guys' time today. Definitely reach out to us if you have any training questions or training needs, and we will get this recording out to you as well. And there will be a post-webinar survey as trainers. That'd be great also for myself to see your feedback. All right, thank you guys and enjoy this short week. And we appreciate your time joining us live this morning. Okay, bye.